as like a writer and as artists, like I think you always get more time with the next release than you had for like the previous one, where it's like I had this much time for Summer City, but I had those demos before Summer City came out, so we had even more time like with these songs. So it was like even more time separated between like the writing, the like practicing, and then the tracking. It's like, okay, we know what this thing is. It lived longer than anything that we've done. And it's like, it's got this life that some other things didn't have when we were doing it more quick. But I got to separate like writer me with like producer me.
So this week on The Record Process, we welcome Ryland Heagy, singer and guitarist of the DC emo rock two-piece Origami Angel. We discuss the story behind their sophomore full-length album, Gami Gang, which they released on April 30th, 2021 via Counterintuitive Records. Gami Gang represents the band's dedication to prolific songwriting and the willingness to rely upon a DIY work ethic to bring the songs to life. We dug into the origin of the band and what they learned about themselves through the making of their first LP, Somewhere City, along with the trusted collaborators that facilitated a slightly different tracking and mixing process this time around. I got to share the road with Ryland and Pat earlier this year, and I've been looking forward to highlighting their unique style and personality on the show for a while now. Watching them play these songs as a two-piece every night was such an energizing experience, and it really stood as a serious testament to the fact that you don't always need a stage full of auxiliary musicians and elaborate production when you have massive riffs and anthemic melodies on your side. This was a really special one. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did, so here it is. When the world shut down in 2020, musicians and producers everywhere were forced to re-examine and reimagine their creative process. Without the possibility of in-person studio collaboration, the future of music production was anything but certain. But as the old saying goes, where there's a will, there's a way. And for those professionals who were determined to never compromise on the quality of their audio, the world-class engineers at Audio Movers established that way. By combining the HD streaming of lossless multi-channel audio straight from your DAW with the unique ability to adjust latency and bitrate, Listen To stands as the solution to unlocking global creativity in music production. Its power has been felt on Grammy Award-winning albums and on over 85% of all modern Abbey Road studio sessions. So stop letting your physical location dictate the quality of your work and the projects within your reach. For a free trial, just follow the link in our show notes and use the code PROCESS to receive 10% off the first year of your membership. Listen, if you're an artist or musician still struggling to find a better way to distribute and promote your music, and you haven't checked out DistroKid yet, then that needs to jump straight to the top of your to-do list. We are proud to have them back with us for another season of The Record Process, primarily because they, just like us, are committed to empowering and supporting independent artists like you. DistroKid is by far the most affordable service for distributing your music to all digital streaming platforms, and it comes with a bunch of tools to help you elevate your career in a ton of crucial ways. DistroKid not only allows you to spread your music across the streaming ecosystem, regardless of what platform might be top of your focus right now, but it also helps you share your story with labels using their unique upstream tool. You can engage with your fan base using DistroKid's text messaging feature, and they'll even help you create unique lyric videos that can help you promote your music better online. As a Record Process listener, you can get 30% off of your first year's membership just by heading to the show notes and signing up using our affiliate link there. And remember, we always love hearing what you're working on and how tools like DistroKid are helping you create some incredible moments for your fan base. So please don't hesitate to share them with us. And now, here's our interview. Ryland Heagy of Origami Angel, welcome to The Record Process, my friend. How you doing?
Hey, thank you, Casey. Thank you, Tom. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I'm chilling. I'm excited to get into some record talk.
Oh, dude. Well, that's what we do here. You know that. And having shared the stage and the road with you earlier this year, I've been extremely excited to try and make this happen. So thank you for giving us some time. I know you're about ready to head right back out the door to do some more covert recording. This man is always in the studio. It is quite incredible, quite a prolific project that you have on your hands here. And we have asked you here specifically to talk about the newest record, Gami Gang, which came out in 2021, April of that month to be specific, I believe, on Counterintuitive Records. And it's a lot. There are a lot of tracks on this thing, and there is a lot of guitar work. There are a lot of lyrics, and they are all pretty interesting, but we figured the best way to really understand how that came into being was to first go back and do a little bit of origin story work, to figure out how Gami came to be, right? So talk to us about that, dude. How did you and Pat, who plays drums in Origami Angel, how did that friendship and unique relationship kind of come to be and grow into what is Origami Angel now?
Yeah. So I think it must have been like late 2015, early 2016. I was still in high school. I was in this band with my friends that we had started like maybe freshman or sophomore year. It was either junior or senior year. I can't really remember, but we used to do like shows with other bands in our high school, and like at this place in Riverdale called Archie Edwards Blues Collective, which I think unfortunately is not there anymore. I think it was like just a community space, and it was all community funded, and it was really cool. They did like a lot of grassroots music stuff there. It was really, really sweet. And we used to like throw a couple shows there every month, and we had one band play, and Pat was actually drumming in that band. And he went to a different school, like he was from a completely different circle, but we did not have a drummer at that time. Like our band had like gone through drummers, like a lot of bands do when they start out. And then we were like, oh, wow, like you're really good. Do you want to like play? Cause like we have like a show in 2 days that we need someone to drum for. And then he was like, yeah, sure. So we just practiced the next day, and we went and played this show. We went on some adventures. We played like maybe like 7-8 shows that summer with that band. And then it was like right at the end of our high school experience. So obviously people were splitting ways. Some people were going to college. Some people were, doing other things. That band kind of fizzled out as the summer went on. And then Pat was like, yeah, I want to like keep doing this music thing, because he was staying in the area and I was staying pretty local too. And I was like, yeah, like I want to, be in a band too, like after this. And I was like, I kind of want to like, I didn't sing in that band. I played like lead guitar, and sometimes I'd sing some harmonies and shit, and like sometimes it'd help, right? And then I was like, yeah, I got like some songs, and I definitely want to like be like a person, like that's like making music. I want to be a front person. I want to like sing and shit. Maybe be in a 2-piece band. And he was like, yeah, that'd be cool. So then like we kind of just started working on our first EP, Quiet Hours. Recorded that super DIY. Ended up putting it out. And yeah, it kind of just started all just of the idea. It's like we had this music before, and then it was kind of like, well, we know what it's being in like this 4-piece band. Like, let's try something completely different. Like, let's try something where we're like restricting ourselves almost to like try to be more creative. And then from there, we did the first thing, and then it was like, okay, what did we learn? What not to do after that first thing? And then it's like, oh, what do we want to do? It took a while for us to kind of sift through like, well, we have these ideas like me as a songwriter, like I have these ideas like when I'm sitting on an acoustic guitar, but like I want to make stuff sound that's really cool, like, or make stuff that sounds really cool when we play it live too. And it's like, oh, well, we play these songs differently live. And then, just kind of working towards like, how do we find that happy medium where we're engaging in what we do really well live as live musicians, but also keeping this ingenuity on a record to like make something that's, listenable and has like value to listen to. So, and that, yeah, I guess that's kind of like a really convoluted way to say that we met in high school and at a DIY show.
You know what, dude? That is the best way to say that for a few reasons, because you brought up some really interesting things that I want to go back and put a pin on real quick. Because I have here on my little cheat sheet of things that, burning questions on my mind that we didn't necessarily get to answer or dig into when we were on tour. And one of which is, why did y'all stop at 2 members? Most people are like, okay, cool. We got drums. We got guitar. I'll sing. We need a bass player. Maybe another guitar player, maybe somebody to cover those hot tambo licks, right? You guys decided to stop at 2, and for an interesting reason there that you kind of just, like, you've been in bands with multiple members, right? And yeah. It was almost a calculated decision to, in an effort to illuminate some different creative choices, stop at 2 members to challenge yourselves. Is that accurate? It's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah, that's like honestly a really big part of it. Another thing is the band The Obsessives, who eventually they branched out to be 4 or 5-piece band, but they had been in DC and did the 2-piece thing like for a really long time. And I saw like the way that they were kind of like breaking mold as like they were challenging themselves and doing all this really cool stuff. And like seeing that band, you'd be like, I've never seen a 4-piece band that sounds this big, and they just did it as 2. And it's like, it was like addicting to see that live and see that energy. And I was just like, I think, we want to try this. Like, I remember we saw them at like one of the last shows that they played as a 2-piece in the DC area in a house. And it was like infectious. And it was like, I think we kind of looked at each other like we could try this, you know what I'm saying? Like, we might not be this good, but we could try this. And yeah, what you said, Casey, about like, yeah, like restricting the amount of members just to see what we could bring out in ourselves creatively, like, where it's like, you know, I think it's kind of fun. And it kind of goes in sort of what we could talk to about LP2 later when we get to it. It's just like that restriction can often bring out like the most creative, juices between two people or between anybody, where it's like, okay, we're not going to do X or Y. Like, I mean, you know, back in the day when you're cutting the tape, there's a whole different thing there where it's like, oh, we got one thing to do here. And then you end up, you know, with I think you can easily, the option fatigue of like what we had done before kind of was like, oh, we can't really find a movement. And now it's like, okay, if we take some of that out, it's going to be a lot harder for us to fill up stuff, but like we can figure it out. And whether that's like as writers or as like in an audio engineering sense, where it's like, oh, how am I going to do this live rig? How am I going to set it up so it sounds, you know, big enough? Like, it's just, it's a challenge, but particularly as like the only melodic element, I was willing to take that challenge and just like try to do it as good as we could.
I felt the same way. If you remember the band Japan Droids,
yes,
like seeing them, like, and you're just like, oh, and then like there's the 2-piece fest, in Philly. Like I don't know if it's if they've done it the last couple of years, but like just so cool to see like that restriction and how it brings out like the different styles. So that so cool.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
And I mean, like if you look at like speaking of like the 2-piece world, right? There are some iconic ones, but I remember seeing even, you know, if you're a band that can pull that off, especially coming up in like the DIY touring era, right? And playing like just doing it like a kit, and whether it's a guitar or there's another incredible band, Slingshot Dakota, that I remember seeing play, right? It's just keys and a drummer, and I remember everybody in our band just being like jaws on the floor, like, what the fuck is this? This is unreal, right? And it strips away all those preconceived notions that you need, like, I don't know, 3 guitar players in a pop punk band or something, right? You know, who would ever do that? That's insane. Those things that we were like, well, that's how you make it full, right? And especially you mentioned as like, you know, a budding, like figuring things out, whether it be like in your home studio or bedroom, how do bands make such an incredible, massive sounding, you know, wall of guitars? Well, it must mean they have like 6 overdubs of everything. And then when you strip it away, you're like, no, it's actually like solid composition and finding this, like, you know, the integrity of a really convincing riff or a really convincing line or the way you structure a chord shape. And I love that about you, because that's an admirable thing that I think informs everything beyond that with where you went with Somewhere City and the things that you started seeing on there. So let's talk as we kind of move forward. What did you learn and what was the goal? You know, you had started working, you know, had some songs coming together with the two of you. What did you learn going into Somewhere City, or what had you learned up until that point? And what were some of the big takeaways of how those songs came together for y'all as a 2-piece in the studio?
For sure. Yeah. So I think like before, and even like when we were writing Somewhere City, it was like, we never had the idea that like we were only kind of writing to like, you know, 50 to 75 people in the DC area, right? Like we were like, these are people that come to our shows and have fun, and we have this like small community, and it's like really cool. And it was kind of like, you know, we had pretty much DIY'd every recording process up until that one, and that was the first one where like we came off a tour in like, I want to say June of 2019, and like it was like, oh, we like have money left over from this. Like, it was like, we didn't like, we're not in the negative. We're not in the red, right? Like, we're like, oh, we have like a couple $100 off of this. Oh, we could record drums with this in a studio. You know, we're thinking like, this is the first time that we've got this opportunity to do that. Like, we had just never been in the position to do that. So with those, it's like, we finally were just like, okay, if we're going to really do a full record, like a full LP, finally 10 songs, whatever, at 30 minutes. And it's like, let's actually take that step and do this with not just, me being the only person pressing play and record and running it through like whatever interface, a bullshit interface I had at the time, where it's like, oh, we'll actually take this next step. We actually recorded drums for that in Philly at this place called the Boom Room in Fishtown. And we recorded the rest of it in Jake Checkaway's bedroom. So it's like, for the first time, I think we were kind of just seeing it unfold without being the people pressing play and like going over it. And it was pretty cool, because I think that was like the first time where I was able to kind of like just take a step back and actually just like hear this as a song instead of like a project, like hear each thing as, instead of like me being like, oh, this needs this and this and this, and like I need to do this and I need to get this. I was kind of just like hearing it come together, and it kind of allowed us to go into a bunch of different directions for each song. Like that's something we hadn't really tried before. It was like, oh, like a month later, like after hearing those like first rough mixes or unmixed stuff, you're like, oh, what if this thing like low harmony here, like what if we added in like this layer or clean blend here or stuff like this, and it kind of just allowed us to be able to like hone in the small things that like once you start making like bigger projects is like just something you might overlook when you're doing your first couple things, but like just the experience of the first things and learning how we did all that stuff on our own kind of just set us up for, oh, we're doing this big full one. It's like, oh, now we can hear this stuff and just, I don't know, you have experience doing anything, but you're going to be able to figure out how to make those little things even more cute,
Well, so it comes down to a bit of a bandwidth thing, right? Because before this, it was everything from top to bottom. You like not only the creative, not only the compositional end of things, but then also the implementation, execution, mixing, bringing everything there. And then you brought Jake in. How did that relationship come about, and what did that look like early on? Because that was kind of this collaborative, piece of the puzzle that I think helped you take that step back, right? Helped you take off that engineering hat and take off that, mixing hat and editing hat for a second, and have some space to really experience how the things are coming back at you through the speakers, because you're not as overwhelmed with, task rabbiting everything down the line, right? How did that come together? How did you meet Jake, and what made you think that was like the next, solid move for y'all?
Yeah. So I've always been a fan of like Jake Checkaway's work, whether it was like Sleeping Patterns. He did a lot of stuff for what that ended up being on Counterintuitive Records, which is the label we're on right now, which has always been one of my favorite record labels as far as they've been like, putting stuff out. And it was just like, there was like this mythos of like Jake Checkaway mixed this, he mixed old soul. He did a lot of really good stuff. And when we did Doing the Most, our second EP, I actually hit him up to mix it. So like I recorded everything, produced it, edited it up. And I was just like, hey, I got these stems, would love you to mix it. And he kind of just hit the ground running with us. And it was like, okay, I think he just gets what we're trying to do. Just, like in a really simple and non-convoluted way. I didn't have to be like, we want to sound like X and Y. And this, like, he takes a very naturalistic approach. And I feel like that's what I've always wanted with this band, but like still enough polish that it's like, something that you can see considerable difference from the raw tracks, right? So he mixed that. He ended up mixing up Gen 3, which is the EP after that, the split that we did with the band called Commander Salamander. And then, it was just the right place, right time for us to both convene and have him track a record when we came to Somewhere City. So it's like we had built that relationship of, oh, he's doing a great job mixing and mastering our stuff. Now it's like, let's take that next step. So I think having that online communication where I was sending him stems for, a year and change before we got to track Somewhere City was like, okay, we're like, we're very comfortable with each other musically. And then Jake's just such a chill dude. So that like, and he's great at what he does. And what's really cool is like, he can take as much like of a role or as little as a role for any project or any song as would need be. So I think, like what you're saying is taking off like the editing hat and the like the engineering hat. And it kind of allowed me, instead of just being like person playing guitar or like singer or whatever, it kind of allowed me to fall more into just like a co-producer role, right? Where it's like, I'm hearing stuff and I'm like, oh, like we got to change this way. And it like just clicked right into that type of brain thing, which I wasn't really easily able to do before. Like when I was the one at the computer, just like doing this stuff and having that combination, I think really just allowed us to find a new workflow. And it's something we've gone back to him, and it's really great. I think it works really well for like what we try to do as a band.
Yeah, I think that's so important, right?
Yeah.
you're so close to the project that you couldn't see. You're like, oh man, this one snare hit, I need to replace that one snare hit, and you're not even thinking about the harmony that could go there.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I love that.
Well, it allows you, and I think what's great about it allows you to stay excited about the song, which is super important, especially when from an independent, workflow capacity, the more time you spend on something, the easier it is to start falling out of love or questioning it and doubting it, right? The further you might get from that initial spark of inspiration. And so I think that the great piece of that puzzle is bringing in anybody, whether it's somebody early on to help, really build out that core spark, of the songs, or to bring someone in to track it so that you can just stay in there and groove with Pat and just have fun, going through the parts and not worrying about capturing. Or if it's at the end, you're saying, hey, this is good, but if I follow this further into the mix phase, even if I think I can do it and want to have fun, and a lot of people do, because that is a fun skill set to learn and cultivate, especially now with technology and what can be done in the box. But sometimes it allows you to get even further and too deep into it. So I think that foresight and understanding that hey, passing it off at a certain point can actually bring back that excitement and enjoyment of making those songs and making that music. And in this case, you just kind of pulled Jake's involvement up because you knew it was somebody that was already there floating in, the final stage of the process. And I love that. And I think you see that a lot because it's establishing what we talk about all the time here on the show, right, Tom? It's establishing that trust and those layers of trust by you even just back and forth sending files back, you understanding that he knows what you're going for, having those little micro conversations. It's all adding value to that relationship along the way. And then when you were like, hey, we should bring in somebody to track some drums and help us do this, they were there. So it's somebody close. It's like you mentioned now, having someone like Drew, right? Who you've spent a lot of time with, right? We had Andy Clark, who has done front of house for us a lot. We had him come and help us with our new record that's coming out in September, right? It's the same thing. When you have that time, space, and those resources, there's people around that you cultivate those relationships with. So that's awesome, man. I love that. And that kind of brings us, into understanding all about that and what that process starts to look like at its fullest for Origami Angel. Now let's turn to what happens after Somewhere City and leading up to that, because that hit, right? People were excited about those songs, and that was a huge upswing for y'all. So what was that period like, and where did expectations start to go for the next one?
Right. Yeah. So we in terms of the way Somewhere City panned out, it's we had the record, we put it out, we played these 3 release shows, one in Philly on the day it came out, one in the DC area the day after, and one in Pittsburgh 2 days after, just a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I feel like I was, proud of the record, but also had the longest time I'd ever had with any certain product that we'd done. The way that we had done it before is we got the mixes and masters of this, let's put it out next month, right? And with shorter things that you would do that, and that's kind of what we did with everything. Gen 3 we had for a while, but Summer City was the thing that I'd been spending the most time actually writing, and so it's kind of what you mentioned earlier, Casey, where it's you can fall out of love with stuff. It wasn't that I was falling out of love with it, but it's you almost become tone blind to it, because you're I've heard this more than any person will ever hear it. And I still think that that's true, right? Because it's this has been in my head before it was ever even in a GarageBand demo. And it's so I was kind of oh, I don't know what's going to happen. That's always really what it comes back to, right? It's we've worked so much on this. We put in however many hours in the studio, however many hours. Jake's put in however many hours mixing. I've signed off on these mixes, these masters. They sound great. But after that, you're this is cool, this is cool, this is cool. Oh, but people are going to hear it. You got no freaking idea of what's going to happen. You're just you don't know. So I think we go up to play Philly. All the really shows were house shows, which is sick. We wanted to do it like that. We play this house in Philly, Luigi's Mansion, and it's wild. Everybody is singing to every song that came out that day. And it's there's a wall of death in a basement. I'm this is so cool. This is cool. Then we hit the DC area one, which is the next day. And it was that times 10. And it was dangerous. And then it was oh, I never expected this to ever be like this in my life. This is insane. This is just a crazy vibe. We go on a tour after these release shows, probably about a month after. And now it's that's when the record's really starting to like get that traction of like in the first month, 2 months of it. And we booked this tour way before, right? We booked this tour before the album came out. So that was like kind of the thing we used to do back then, where it's like, we booked this tour and then we put out this new music and then people will come to the thing. So we booked it with the idea of like what we had done earlier that summer. But so it was really cool. We were playing a bunch of like weird locations. Like we played a bowling alley in Los Angeles. We played a tattoo parlor in Phoenix, I think. We were just in cool spots, not as many venues, a couple of house shows on that tour. But it went way above like what we were expecting it to, right? Because we had booked it off what we'd done that summer. We expected it to just kind of be like a chill thing that people might like. But yeah, no, the reception to it immediately was great. And we were really stoked on what we could do next. And it was the first time we were like quantifiably saying like, wow, there's people that enjoy what we're doing. And we can go to Los Angeles and have a couple hundred people come out and like, you know, post the set online and have people talk about it. And then we are gearing up to do the same thing in May of 2020. And COVID said, you don't get to do that. And like, you don't get to do this headline tour, like our first headline tour. And yeah, then it kind of just turned into this thing where I had no idea what people thought about us as a band or our relationship with that album or people's relationship with that album. And yeah, that was a couple years before we played again.
Oh man. So you got to see like the start of that momentum, but then you were just cut off from it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then where do you turn? Right. So I think like all of us at like musicians, everybody working in any creative industry really, but especially, you know, one that is so heavily predicated on live performance, you know, shared in experience, you know, that awful experience of like, you know, the lack of understanding, you know, where it was going to go next, how to navigate it. So after you start initially kind of like grappling with that, you know, the loss of that headline tour opportunity, which was probably a really exciting time, right?
Yeah.
All that gets stripped away. Taking a minute here to shout out our good friends at Sheet Happens Publishing, back with us again for season 3. They are a company that works directly with artists to create accurate and immersive tab books, vinyl, and other merch that allows fans to get one step closer to perfecting the soundtrack of their lives. As many of you may know, I had the pleasure of working side by side with them to put together a book for my band, The Wonder Years, and believe me, they are incredibly thorough and always dedicated to artist-approved accuracy in every one of their books. Every tab book comes with the accompanying guitar profiles, which allow you to jump right into playing along with all of your favorite tracks. So all you need to do is head over to sheethappenspublishing.com to check out everything they have to offer, and be sure to enter the code TRP15 at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. Or you can find the link in our show notes, and again, that's promo code TRP15. At what point in there did you start kind of turning your sights to, oh, well, we can always write new music, or, you know, or could you, or what was that struggle like that started bringing your focus towards the next record?
Well, what's so crazy is that for LP2, for Gami Gang, I had the like full demos of it, like 20 songs, all of them, like 5 days before Somewhere City came out, like as like a garage band thing. So we always had the songs, like, and we were like, this just when we do this, like, and we were going to try to get the ground running or hit the ground running, like right before that headline tour. We wanted to start making some like serious work on it. Obviously, you know, the world had other plans, and yeah, everybody, like you said, like everybody just kind of lost that relationship. I think, you know, as what you're saying about like live performance, it's like, you can look at the numbers, you can see how many people are streaming your shit right now, like with the Spotify for Artists thing. Like you can be like, oh, you can't quantify it in your brain, right? Until you see it. I know you feel and know this. It's like, it's a different feeling when you're like out there, when you're in a place that you may have never even been before, and there's someone saying something back, or even just watching you like just enjoying and having a good time because of this thing that you're a part of. It's like, that's what really gives you the not motivation, but like the understanding that's like, oh, you know, I shouldn't just give up. Like maybe this is kind of cool. This is something that other people enjoy and I should enjoy. It's like, you don't have that, right? And so I guess what ends up happening is at the beginning of COVID, it's like, oh, well, we don't know if we're ever going to play or record music again. It's not really the thing that we're thinking about right now. As time goes on and it gets worse, and like, but as we get a better understanding of like what the picture is, it's like, okay, probably not probably not touring in May, probably not going to Japan in July. It's like that was like the other thing we were going to do. Probably not looking at doing stuff in the fall, but we're getting a better understanding of what this all is. Probably not going to go to the studio just because we were just like, let's not even risk it at this point. We eventually kind of convened on the idea that what if we rented a bunch of mics and tracked drums in my bedroom for LP2 and just, you know, try to do it as good as we can. Like the old days, DIY style, but with like this like newfound knowledge of how we did Summer City and also just like better equipment. And that's what we ended up doing. Like, that's like what we turned to. And it was like a week and change of me just being like, am I ready for this? Right. Because this record, it's obviously like anything you work on is going to be important to you. But to me, I'm like, this is a 20-song album. This is almost an hour long. Do I really want to take on like the sole responsibility of like, I'm producing this, I'm pressing play again. It's, you know, like I'm setting everything up. I'm doing all this stuff. We're renting mics or doing all this stuff. But it took a second. And then I was like, well, what else is going to happen? You know, I feel like a lot of times, like you have this moment in your life where it's like, maybe it's, you know, it might be scary to dip your feet into that water. It might be crazy. You know, these are like 20 songs you love. This is like feels like a diary of your life with like, for me, it's like, it feels like I have songs that I wrote in like 2014 there, or ideas that I had like a really long time ago, all the way up to 2020. It's just like this big, long thing, or 2019 more so, but like this thing that feels like such a part of me because of how long it is. It's like, do I want to, you know, take the chance of fucking this up? Like, do I want to be the one who messes up this whole thing and makes it not as good as it could be? But, you know, I think kind of the moment where it's like, well, there's a lot of people who can't even do anything right now. And like musically, there's people who feel even worse than this, and just even having the opportunity to do this and having a label who would be willing to fund, oh, here, you can rent these mics. That's a treasure. And we should absolutely try to find something that, in this process that we can't find elsewhere right now in like performing live music. And yeah, so like you said, we kind of just heel turned to a new record and that we already had written. I think that was like a big thing, was like, if we had to be like, okay, now time to write while the world is, you know, on fire and falling apart, which, you know, It always is, but like even more so. And evidently that would have been a lot more difficult, but it's like, we were able to heel turn to this thing that we already had. So,
right. Dude, that's such an important, and interesting part of all of this, because I know a lot of people, and we've talked with at this point a decent number of musicians that put together albums, or, you know, were writing and grappling with the fact that they didn't feel like living inside a lot of that like horrible those horrible memories and really powerful, painful things. It's like a lot of people turn away and it's like, I just don't feel like writing right now. I don't want to keep myself in that mindset, in that mood that I need to do to finish these songs, because it's so viscerally affecting them, everything that's happening around them, right? So I mean, the fact that was in a way the timeline that you had those songs all ready to go and lined up in demo form, I think was one of the key points that allowed you to then take that next step of trusting yourself to take that on, because that's a lot to take on, right? I mean, like you said, it's almost like, you know, you're like, are we taking a step backwards? Am I taking on too much again? You know, is it worth it? And so that's a lot of self-confident stuff in you that kind of fell all back on you. And if writing a whole album and on top of that was there, that's even more unimaginable in terms of the weight and pressure. So I think that's a huge thing. I'm curious, a couple things then, because all these songs were written right leading up to this, and you said like pretty much right when Summer City dropped, like you already had all of these songs for Gami Gang written. Yeah. Did you go back at all and kind of self-edit or play around with any parts of Gami Gang, any of those songs, based on what you saw, even just briefly from the response to Somewhere City, even just from those live shows, from playing those songs live, even though you were stripped of an opportunity to get a real decent cross section of it, you had a little bit of it. Were there any moments where you're like, hey, this part really brought out something incredible when we played it live? Let's see if we can capture that energy and put that into this song or this song. Were there any moments like that where you went back and changed those demos? What's so weird is like, not really at all. The only quantifiable change that was changed from like that day, like 5 days before the album came out, where I had all the demos and
And like when we started tracking it, like there was lyrics that would change. There was like slight little, noodles on guitar that I would change up a little bit. The small stuff where it's like the outline stayed pretty much identical. The only thing is that there was a track after the last track that was like a not song. It was it was just like one of those like, oh, to say we got to 20, but we ended up stripping that and adding the song Footloose Cannonball Brothers, which I did write in 2020. That was the one that was like, I was like, maybe we just add this in as the 20th song. Cause I want to do 20. I don't know. It's in my head. Like that's one of it. And it was like, let's add this one in, take out that last one, which is kind of like not really a musical endeavor. It's more of an aesthetical thing. So yeah, we added that one in, but that's like the only thing that changed at all. And yeah, I guess I kind of was so separated at the point of like, even just in those quick, like 3 months between like when we were playing those songs live and like when we had to start thinking about the next record, I wasn't even so much thinking about like a live performance or like what people liked there. Cause I honestly never saw us playing this record live. I never saw, I thought that was going to be the heel turn. It's like, we gotta be a digital band now, just
totally.
And it, I feel like we're incredibly lucky that it's not like that anymore. But I mean, like for a while, it's like, that was kind of what we were going off of. We were like, let's figure out like, how can we maintain this? So I think instead of thinking about like what went really hard live, it's interesting because like we had all the songs before and it like for the first time, let me backtrack 1 second. I think it's interesting that as like a writer and as artists, like I think you always get more time with the next release than you had for like the previous one, where it's like, I had this much time for Summer City, but I had those demos before Summer City came out. So we had even more time like with these songs. So it was like even more time separated between like the writing, the like practicing, and then the tracking. It's like, okay, we know what this thing is. It's lived longer than anything that we've done. And it's like, it's got this life that some other things didn't have when we were doing it more quick, but I got to separate like writer me with like producer me. And this time I was like, okay, these songs exist. And now it's kind of like I'm owing it to that version of me that didn't know that COVID was right around the door. Producer me has to take on the sole job of making that other version's like dreams come true with this record, right? It's like, listen, that you got to be the producer that comes in and says like, it's not going to be the way that we wanted to, but I have the solution, right? So it's like fully just that brain. And that part of the brain was like, let's try some shit that we don't know if we can play alive yet. Like let's fucking add synth layers here and like the Mellotron thing and like this wild harmony and like dumb chorus effects for some stuff and crazy overdubs and shakers and all this stuff, where it's like, let's take that next step to like, we will worry about the live stuff after, it's the first time that we'd ever gotten into that mindset. And I was just like, okay, cool. Like, let's just do this as a production, as like as a producer. So it's like almost in a way where it's like, we didn't do that when we had like the studio and shit. And now it's like, we don't, and we're trying to do it just,
Yeah. I love that.
Oh, I love that, dude. Jinx case.
Yeah, no, Ryland, dude, that is, so in a way it almost that short window of time, it allowed you to not overthink it, but also put you squarely in that scenario that did allow you to run with some of those other ideas because you kind of had this, fuck it, we might never play this live anyway. Let's just go ham on this. Right.
Yep.
So I love that because that informs so much of like the situational, time, place, and mindset stuff that we always talk about. And that's why this record sounds the way it does, because of when it was done and how it was done and all those choices. Well, Tom, here, you field it from here, because I know you've got some questions.
Yeah, I would love to like dive into like more like what the recording process was outside of like you renting the mics. Was it legit in your bedroom?
This room right here.
Love that. But like, yeah. So like walk us through like, I guess outside of that, like week and a half of drums, what did the like process look like? Yeah.
So the process was kind of like, so we had like, it was such a long time between like when we had practiced before COVID and then like when we started up for this stuff too. So a lot of it was like re-familiarizing ourselves with the songs and stuff. So we practiced for about, I want to say like 2 to 3 weeks. And we would just like, the way we actually did it was like, we practiced the whole record, just like got everything. I had like a, not a whiteboard, but like a piece of cardboard with like all the songs on it and be like, or like, how are we feeling? Like I'd shade it into like when it's like 100%, like, and it's like, okay, we're good.
Love that.
On this one. Then we would like
a health meter.
Exactly. The health bar, the big boss. And it's just going down. It's like, okay, we tackled this one. And then so what we ended up doing was like, then we would revisit like 6, because there's 20 songs on the album, but only 18 have drums. And so the way that we kind of contextualized how are we going to do this, and like the plan that I kind of made as the producer was like, okay, now we'll revisit 6 of these and we'll get them. We're good on all these songs, but let's get like fucking perfect on 6. And then so we'd spend like maybe that week just going ham on it. It was not in order. It wasn't like first 6, second 6, third 6. It was just like whatever 6 we felt like we could do at the first time. And then the weekend we would just like track on Sunday or Saturday and Sunday. We'd have the mics. I'd get them on a Friday night for the rental service and just set them up in my bedroom. Use this the mattress as like a bass trap in the corner. Just like it was completely stripped. It was messed up. It was cool. And I would set it up, and then Pat would come over, and then we would track drums. And something that's interesting in terms of just like the miking and stuff. I knew that we didn't have the pleasure of having a studio treated room. This room is a really dry sounding room, which I kind of like for this record, where it's like a lot of articulate drum shit that like you don't have that like huge, like it sticks around for a long time, like live room type of sound. So it kind of like played into like some things that we're doing. But yeah, I kind of took the liberty of being like, well, we don't have the luxury of having this treated room. Let's just get as much source as we possibly can. So where we'd usually just use like an overhead pair and a hi-hat mic, it's like, okay, now we have a ride spot. Now we have under tom mics. Now we have a front of the kick mic. Now we have a side snare and a top snare, bottom snare, and a side. Just because it was like renting mics is actually really cheap compared to owning mics. Like you can do it. It's a very cost affordable like alternative to studio time if it's something that you're thinking of. But like we went, instead of using like 12 inputs or something, I think it ended up being like 18, 19 or like spots on the drums. Just because it's like, well, we can do it, and we probably would benefit from having, alternative sources just in case, where I'm thinking like, what if it's not punchy enough? What if we do need that front of the kick mic? What if we need that beater side thing? What if we fuck up the snare sound? What if we need the SM7B that's just on the side of the channel, like right where the air comes out of the snare thing? So yeah, then we would track those for 2 days and then do the same thing. And we did those for 3 weekends in a row. And that was how we tracked the drums, basically. And then, yeah, we'd get a bunch of takes of drums, and just like, what we would do is we work with Jake Checkaway, and we would have him like do a drum edit, like just get like the best of those takes and piece them all together and send back to me whenever it was time to record other stuff over top of it.
Cool. Love that. And we got edits for drums rocking. As far as like guitar, what was the process there? Was it still in the same room?
Yeah, same room, everything was in here. Absolutely everything. And so yeah, it was really like, at that point I was like, I think the only thing I can do, guitar is so fucking weird to like you can do all these complicated things. It's such a complicated instrument. It's got, so much tonal versatility. It's got, you got pedals, you got buffers, you got switchers, you got amps, you got this like, for me, I was using a Fender DeVille on it, but you can record with anything you want. Right. But then sometimes the best way to capture guitar is just putting the smallest SM57 right on it. And that's it. Like the simplest recording setup. And then you're just like, okay, that's cool. It's weird and it feels convoluted, where it's like drum. It's like you got these 18 mics on it. You're doing whatever, this crazy stuff. People have their crazy thing. Guitar, it's like, damn, I got all this stuff, all this effects processing, these crazy ass pedals. I'm just going to put one mic on it. But that's how we did it. And we've branched out from that on like future things where it's like, a couple different mics on the cab, room mics and stuff. But there was really no room sound for this record, where it's like, it's just it ends up just being a 57 on it. And yeah, very similar thing where it's like I just get a bunch of takes of stuff, but in a way where like in the past I'd be like on someone else's time or on a studio's time, like tracking and like, let's do this. I'd be able to like do this like dirt layer and like sit on it for a little bit and be like, no, we need a clean blend in there too. Let's do this clean blend, and take a minute and be like, acoustic would be great on this chorus. Run the acoustic. And take a minute, just like this verse, I feel like we gotta like do some feedback shit before. So it's like, it's just me in the box in this chair, like and just like sitting, no time constraints at all, right? I would just like sit in. I love playing guitar, so it's like it's not really a thing to me. It's just like, I'll get in the box, headphones on, track whatever, and just like, instead of being like, oh, we got all the guitar for this song done, this song done, this song done, getting all the stuff done. It's like, no, I can really like sit in here and hone it in. And that like, you know, goes hand in hand with the production role I was trying to take on this album. And then, yeah, just kind of like letting it live and then being like, I should put the Mel 9 on, the little Electro Harmonix Mellotron pedal. Like I should 100% add some layers here, and just really hearing things before that I never had the like time to hear, you know, and because we were always in a rushing thing. It's like things slow down for us. We slow down. We're not on the time of, I have a 57. I'm not renting that mic. Like I could sit here and just go off and yeah, it was weeks of just like kind of sitting on this stuff because we didn't care when we put it out. We were just like, let's just get this thing ready, you know. Doesn't matter when this one comes out. That's just like the way we approached it. And yeah, same thing there. Bass, it was just like a little bit different than how we'd done before, but still I think I just ended up going like direct in off of the Sansamp DI, like the Sansamp bass thing. Had it split out with a like DOD Meatbox subharmonic synth for like that real low shit, just for fun, and then a clean DI, and then it's like just gave that to Jake and just be like, you know, however you want to do this, do it. It's fun, you know.
Love that. And
Vox, same thing. You know, it's just like but it took like such a long time, and but not like it took a long time. I'm not saying that like it's like, oh, it's like we took a long time, because that was like the fun way to do it. And you know, you go through these bouts where it's like, oh, I just did all this stuff and now I'm like worked out, and it's like, damn. And then you like look at the world around you and it's just crazy. And then you come back like a month later and you're like, I think that was the cool thing about this one. It's like we come back a month later, and sometimes those ideas before where you have to like find them, sit down there in the chair and be like, what do we need? What do we need? You hear it later and you're just like, oh, what the hell? Of course we need the shaker on this one. Like, duh. Like, you know, like you hit that. It's like, oh, why didn't I think of this harmony that's just in my head already? It's almost like it was already there. You come back after a long time and it's like the ideas are just right there for you to just basically copy and paste right onto into Pro Tools, you know?
Love that. Yeah.
Final thought. So you painted an incredible picture of how this all came together and over time, and what the lack of deadline actually allowed you to do with that additional time and with that experimentation. And I think that's always a really important part of any record, but specifically a record where it's just the two of y'all, and you know, you have a very core sound, but this was a record where it showed, you know, that push and pull, right? And you had the time to do that because there was no deadline. So with that in mind, taking that producer hat on, right? Sometimes and what I tend to believe can be a really helpful asset of a producer and the role that they can play in a production is keeping things moving at like a really healthy pace, both for the sake of the, you know, where things can go creatively, but also in terms of making sure that either deadlines are hit or they're utilizing the best use of their time, right? Or sometimes that's also a really important role, just to be like, stop, dude, we got it. That's it. Don't overthink it, right? Yeah. In the same way that you were kind of, you know, I saw some of those moments the way you're describing, like, fuck it, dude. Sometimes a 57, just that's it. Like everything else is cool. It's about the sounds, the pedals, you know, the riff, the tone. Just put a 57 on it and don't overthink that portion of it, right? Yep. Were there other moments, you know, did you develop a workflow for yourself that kept you in a good place? Did you like batch guitar, or did you find that it was, you know, more interesting to kind of hop around and be like, I'm going to lay down the guitar, then I'm going to lay down this cool lead vocal part in the, you know, because I've got it in my head? How did that work? Did you leave things set up for a long period of time so you could just kind of jump back and forth, or was it a bit more methodical? Yeah. So for all the guitar stuff, I was like, I didn't really know how I was going to start it. And then I started, I can't remember what I tracked first on guitar. I started with the first song and I was just like, we'll just take it from here. Like, I'll just get a bunch of takes of every single part and like at least this first tone, maybe some other tones. And then I was like, okay, that's actually fun and cool. Like, I'll just keep recording guitar. And it came to this thing where like another one down where it's like, this is like, you know, that's what I feel like I'm best at. Like, I've been playing guitar since I was like 7. I'm like, this is like the thing that feels most naturally to me musically. It's just like that. So I'm like, okay, done with 2. It ends up being like done with 5, next day, done with 11, next day, done with 18, you know? So like, it's just like, it came in where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then I was like, oh, I tracked all this dirty guitar and all this, like this crunch guitar. And I was like, cool. And I was like, okay, that's dope. Let me start put some acoustics on it, or bass. I think bass is what I pivoted to next. Then I did some acoustics, and then I was like, okay, let's like think what needs a blend here, like clean blends and stuff like that. But I knew some stuff, like I tracked that originally, like with what I was thinking about, where it's just like a bunch of
bunch of big sounding guitars, but then revisiting it and being like, what else do we need? Then kind of taking a step back and then doing vocals more like as a, like all together. Cause I was like, that's the thing that I thought I would need like the most time to just really hone in and like have it be like, oh, there's not this overwhelming weight of like, you got to do bass for the song, guitar for this. It's like, okay, now I'm just singing, you know, like I just got to sing for this. And yeah, I think I basically batched everything. And then came back and did some like extra guitar stuff after and some like extra acoustic stuff. And then harmonies after that, you know, it kind of like, it got to a point where it's like that 85% where it's like, damn, this is like 85% track. And then that last 15% takes like more time than the first 85%, where you're just like finishing it up and takes more thought than anything else. But yeah, I think we got it to the 85%. And then I was more just like concerned with just like finishing every song. Like what does this need? You know what I'm saying? Like after we're tracked.
Yeah.
Yeah,
dude, that's awesome. So real quick, let's just walk me through that last 15%. Because I think what you mentioned there is like a lot of artists, a lot of musicians can kind of conceptualize getting that like 80%, 85%, maybe 90%, right? The foundation. But I think it's sometimes that last 10 to 15% that it becomes the differentiator of those moments that really make it extra special. What was your thought process on that? I mean, you mentioned kind of giving those things space and then revisiting them and being like, oh, duh, it's something we needed up here in the clouds to kind of give it that extra little sparkle or something. Yeah. But were there any moments on this record specifically that you remember having that kind of like aha moment or trying something, that was the thing that was like, that's it. Yeah. That sound, it makes this. What are some of your favorites on there?
Definitely like for Bossa Nova Chorus, one of my favorites on the record, right? It had a couple of those where it's like, okay, this is like what it is, clean guitar. And then I'm like, okay, obviously this like revisiting it, I was like, this needs like a nylon acoustic, just because like that sells this vibe so hard of like it's got this warmer, rounder sound than a regular acoustic guitar. And it's like, it's percussive still in that way, but it's like different, and it has this like very reserved thing. So we tracked that on and I'm like, cool, revisit it again. And I'm like, okay, this needs some like aux percussion in this little jazzy part. And it's like, what do? I had this shaker that I had made from like a beach trip when I was like 11, which is literally a Dr. Pepper can with sand in it and like duct tape around the top. So I'm like tracking that on the SM. So that's like all the shaker sound on the record is just that. Cause I was like, I don't have a shaker here. Like I had that. And then like, so I was just like, I'll just use this. And then I was like, yeah, we maybe add some snaps too. And just literally stood in front of the mic on those. Like, and it just kind of came together like that. And sometimes harmonies would be like that. But like that's an example of that song where it's like I took a long time to just like wait for that. Certain tracks where it's like Tom Holland Oates, where it's like I'd listen back and be like, oh, this like crunch guitar just needs to have like a wild ass chorus on it. It's like tracked or reamped it through like a chorus pedal that I had in it. And I didn't reamp like a DI or anything. I just like took the sound and put it through a chorus pedal back recording into it. Some songs it would be like the Mel 9 stuff. It's like a subtle little like mellotron layer in certain choruses that ended up like just kind of piecing stuff together. Like Neutrogena Spectre has one where it's like a different sound, but like kind of panned like 30-30 on each side. And it's like they're different parts, but they like harmonize with each other. I thought that was a fun one. I'm trying to think. The little harmonic acoustics in Greenbelt Station was one I came back to. It's like, oh, we got to put that on. And it'll like, harmonic electrics over this acoustic guitar. Those are the ones that jump off to me, like right off the top of my head. Stuff like that, where it's just like, oh, we could just like tonally just do something different here, or like drop like this subtle acoustic layer,
Well, yeah. You have this like less 15% sparkling. Yeah. That like that you've thrown on during tour with like Casey and them, and like doing that. How did that translate live? You went from playing Somewhere City, rocking, these songs were already done. You then go and like just like full experimental, like let's just sprinkle and do whatever the song needs. How do you take it back from that to like you're still a two-piece? Yeah. So like a big part of it was like us trying to like figure out the tour that we did before the Wonder Years was with Mom Chains, and we were kind of just figuring out like, okay, we're playing some of these songs, like we can do some of this. I can cover some of this guitar or some of this like synth stuff in a guitar way. But like what actually ended up happening was like on that tour, I got COVID in the middle of it. We all got COVID on that tour. And it was right back when I was about to be back in the DC area, back home.
And so like my parents are older and I was like, I'm not trying to quarantine at home. My little brother was unvaccinated at the time. So I was like, damn, I'll just take this L. Stayed in a hotel for like a week. I had COVID really bad. And the only thing that I could do is like, it was right over Thanksgiving too. So there's no fucking basketball on TV. I was just like, this sucks. There was a couple games, but not on Thanksgiving. Only football. And I'm not as much a football fan anymore, but like, I was like, this sucks. I ended up just watching like, there's like an Office marathon on Comedy Central. And I was just doing mad research on like an in-ears rig because I started using in-ears on the Mom Jeans tour like the day before the tour got paused for a minute due to the COVID stuff. And they just gave me like one of their packs that they weren't using. And I was like running my own like set of ears. And I was like, this is cool. And then I kind of started thinking like what like we could possibly do. Cause like I still have all the guitar and bass stuff coming through my guitar rig and like my switcher and stuff like that. And it's going to three guitar amps and a bass amp. And I was like, that's how we're covering that part, which we've always done stuff like that. But I'm like always thinking like, what's something that we could do extra? And like, I guess like having that time, I was kind of just like thinking like, oh, there is like other stuff that we could do. So like for certain songs, we could like run off of like a click for like certain effects to come in, right? Like for like certain like synth parts to come in for that thing. And it's like, we don't do that for everything. Like the stuff that doesn't need that, we don't do that shit anymore. But like, it's like, okay, like if we want to have that shaker from Bossa Nova Core, we could do that. And that was kind of like that time I was spending down, just like learning all about like the Roland SPD SX, which is like what we use for that stuff. And just like how we would do that as a two piece and kind of like keep the ingenuity of our sound, which is like this big guitar thing through like the one amp up the middle, two amps on the side and a bass amp. Like that's always going to be there. It's like, we can keep that. How can we highlight some of the stuff that we've put the work into? And like, I think some people might be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, I don't know if I want to like do like a pre-recorded thing. I think it's kind of cool. Cause then we started adding bass drops to everything too.
Love the bass drop ads. Love the bass drop ads.
The 808s alone are worth the trip, dude.
That's what I'm saying. It's my favorite part.
Ryland, and what a perfect way to kind of frame all of this together by you went into this having no concept and kind of just being ready and bracing yourself for never getting to play these songs live. And then coming out the other side and realizing, how you've adapted and changed and grown because of that mindset, and then adapting and growing how you treat it as a live band and a live performance. And I love that they work so organically off one another, dude. That's part of what I loved about watching y'all every night. And what I think anybody that listens to this record, I really wanted to give them the essence of exactly that, of knowing that like it comes from both sides, right? These records don't sound the same. The songs aren't written the same way if you didn't have that origin story there. And I love that. Yeah, it's like you're killing it. It's two of you, and sure, you have those additional sounds, but you figured out how to work them in to an organic way. And I love that so much. And I love everything about it. We're so happy to have you. Thank you again for talking through everything about this record. Is there anything else? What's next for y'all? What's coming up in the future, and what do you have your sights on, and what's kind of inspiring you creatively these days, dude?
Yeah, we're going on a headliner this fall with Pool Kids and Insignificant Other. And then Worst Party Ever is also going to be filling in on a couple dates where Pool Kids is going to be at Fest. We're really stoked for that first headline tour. It should be really fun. Like we're going to, just do our best to like craft a really, really fun experience that people can come and vibe with. It's with two bands that I'm so like trying to find the right word. It's just, I'm so impressed by their live demeanor and also just such good friends with the people in those bands. So with Insignificant Other and Pool Kids, I'm just really stoked to hit the road. Hopefully maybe there'll be some like new music out that at some point that people can hear from Origami Angel, but like, we're really, really just stoked to be hitting the road again, being back in this environment, just doing it the best that we can and showcasing, our friends and great musicianship along the way,
That's right, man. Dude, that is going to be quite a tour. I love those people. Everybody involved in that. That's going to be, if you like guitar, it's there. If you like cool vocals, it's there. If you like rhythms, if it's that is a great package. You're going to have a lot of fun on that. I'm going to have to. I hope our paths will cross in the 100%. Fall. I'm going to have to get those dates and look at them because that would be awesome to regroup and reunite with everybody after a bit. Well, dude, thank you so much. And again, take care of yourself. I wish you and Pat the best of luck, and we will talk soon. Where can everybody find you, by the way, in terms of like, the shout outs, whether it's socials or if anybody, obviously search Origami Angel on all DSPs, but if there's anywhere else you want to shout out real quick.
Yeah, for sure. Twitter it's at Gami Gang. Instagram is at Gami.gang. That's about all we use. It's cool. Holler at us. We might say something back.
Definitely holler at them. Also, especially if you're going to holler at him about basketball. That's right. Mostly about that, right? Mostly about Sixers, Flyers. We love that. Okay, cool. Dude, so good. Be well. And thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you. Casey Thomas, been great. Thanks for having me on. Stay safe, y'all.
See ya, bub.
It was so inspiring to hear how Ryland and Pat were able to take the chance on themselves with this record, how they were willing to risk messing up those precious ideas that they'd been hanging on to for so long. Ideas that were definitely full of potential, but required them to trust in themselves, to figure it out, to learn as they went, and ultimately to benefit from the support of an ally like their label that was willing to extend that trust to them and fund a creative solution to bring this album and vision to life. I think it can be really difficult at times to detach ourselves from the comfort and safety of what could be when it comes to bringing ideas to fruition. With each step forward, you risk distorting the perfect picture of how good it could sound in your mind by swapping that out for the realization of how it does sound. I think this is why so many artists struggle with finishing songs or moving from their demo to a final recording. But it's this act of committing to your choices as a musician that builds your confidence, your character, and shapes the substance in your brand that people can actually connect with. I see the process behind Gami Gang as a great example of what makes Ryland and Pat such a powerful force in their scene. And I think it's actually a big part of the reason why the songs resonate so well with a live crowd too. I was really grateful to have someone like Ryland come share the thought process and journey behind putting their own record together like this, especially at a time when I think a lot of musicians felt really isolated. We all go through the same creative peaks and valleys, but it's about coming out the other end, and sometimes you just need a little nudge and some support from those around you. And maybe this episode can serve as just that for someone if you're willing to pass it along. And thank you once again for joining our process right here on The Record Process.